session or this slot, we'd have a session on Muslims in business. Inshallah, we're covering a topic that's tangential to business, but equally as important for each and every one of us. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, our dear brothers at the Islamic Finance Guru have kindly agreed to come and speak to us today to remind us, inshallah, of a very important obligation upon each and every one of us, and that's that of ensuring that we have, as believers, a will in place. Inshallah, they'll be telling us about the virtues of having a will and also the practicalities, especially for those of us who are in the West, in the UK in particular. But inshallah, I thought this topic was very important because it's one that a lot of us neglect. Many of us perhaps are still in the mindset that death is for the old. But as many of us will know, in this last year of COVID-19, many people have passed away, young and old. And we know even without that, death doesn't discriminate. So inshallah, let's be amongst those who, when our time comes, we haven't left our families in a state of chaos, especially where we come from. We see a lot of times squabbles around inheritance and family discord and things breaking down, all because the person before they left didn't ensure that it was known that this was their will and this is how things were going to go down. Could have saved a lot of heartache. So inshallah, I'm sure we all want to avoid such a situation for ourselves and our loved ones. Once again, you still have a chance. For your parents who are not here, perhaps they're able to join, send them the link, let them hear from the experts, inshallah. For your friends, nobody's too young to participate and benefit from this session. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to our dear brothers Ibrahim and Isma'il to introduce themselves and also to run through their presentation. May Allah reward you both for giving up your time on your Saturdays to be with us on our community. We really appreciate it. May Allah make it heavy on your mizan. Barakallahu feek. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and jazakallah khair for you and the team for hosting us today and taking time out on your weekend to invite us to talk about this topic. So inshallah, whilst we're talking about death, I don't want this talk to be dead. And I'm keen, to try and make sure that as many people are engaged as possible. So if you do have any questions, then I presume that you can probably put it in the chat. Is that right?
Indeed,
and then
yes.
Pick it up afterwards. So please do that. And in terms of how we're thinking about structuring the talk itself, we'll talk a little bit about Islamic Finance Guru and who we are and what we do. But then also we'll talk about the will itself, an Islamic will and its significance, both from an Islamic perspective, but also from a really practical legal perspective as well, because there's so many benefits that people don't understand, if they haven't really looked into it. And then I'll be handing over to my colleague Isma'il, who will be talking you through what actually is involved in a will and what is covered, and also he'll be giving you a bit of a whistle-stop tour through our online platform as well, which has just launched actually today. So I hope there aren't any bugs, but inshallah, you'll be the first people to see that after a lot of effort that's gone into it. And then we're obviously more than happy to take any questions. Ismail, any words to add, and then we'll dive in.
No, alhamdulillah. Wonderful to share this opportunity with you, and jazakallah khair to Brother Tawfiq for getting in touch. Ibrahim and I are very passionate about helping the Muslim community to get their wills in place, because from a cultural point of view, previous generations may not have recognized that coming to the West, we actually have to proactively make preparations for our passing, because otherwise things won't go as we as Muslims may expect them to go. And as Brother Tawfiq emphasized, and it's a really good point to make, families in our communities, when really they shouldn't. And one of the blessings of an Islamic will and Islamic inheritance is that sometimes it takes the personal out of it, and we just follow what Allah has set out for us, and alhamdulillah, it should make things a lot more easy for us. So I'll pass back to you, Ibrahim.
Jazakallah khair, Isma'il. Yeah, so Islamic Finance Guru, in a nutshell, it started off back in 2015 as a community blog, as a labor of love. Me and my co-founder Mohsin, we were working as corporate lawyers at the time, and we started writing essentially for ourselves because I was doing my ILM course at the time. I was doing my master's in Islamic banking, and we found that there wasn't really anything on the internet that was really practical, but also informed from a fiqh perspective. And people seem to find it quite useful. So we did it for the next 4 years. And then the whole thing kind of evolved, and we decided, okay, let's try and put it on a more sustainable footing and actually go full time on this. So today, alhamdulillah, we get over 100,000 people visiting our website every single month. And it's a halal investment platform that helps you tool up essentially for your financial and investment journey. And we also help you find and compare the best halal investment products out there. And essentially, it's like this one-stop shop that sorts you out from a financial perspective. And for us, the whole reason why we do this is, it's a very mission-driven purpose for us. We want to help the Muslim community, which is at least 20% poorer than the rest of the world, get back to a level playing field. If you look in the top 100 companies in the world, Muslims should be about 20-25% of them, but actually there's only one Muslim company. In the UK, 44% of Muslims live in the 8% poorest constituencies in the UK. So, we are not necessarily as financially savvy as perhaps we could be. And then that has really, material implications for things like health outcomes. We saw COVID, hit Muslims worse than other people. Education outcomes. Again, COVID sort of, brought that out really, really starkly. If you don't go to private school, then you're not necessarily going to do as well. Political underrepresentation, media misrepresentation, all sorts of implications, right? So the economics of everything is absolutely vital to work out. And I'm not saying that economics is everything, but for us, that's our expertise and that's our focus. And, inshallah, we want to make a contribution there. And so where does Islamic wills fit into all of this? You might be wondering. Well, you see, Islamic wills is a fundamental stepping stone into sorting out your personal finances. So that's the first and key reason why, we really care about this. But also an Islamic will is, it's that instrument, it's that document that takes the wealth of a person and passes it from one generation to another generation. And what we want to do, our mission is we want to help make Muslims wealthier. So what we don't want to do is we help make Muslims, financially better off, and the ummah as a whole is doing better. But then once that person dies, because of tax and because of mismanagement, it actually, ends up back at, level one again. So the will is an important way of making sure that we actually have continuity when it comes to our finances. And in terms of, the significance of a will, I'll just basically touch on the Islamic side and then the practical side. From an Islamic perspective, it's very clear. There are, emphatic hadith about how a person, if he has something to bequeath, Prophet ﷺ said, should not go 2 nights without actually having a will written and with him, when he sleeps. So this is something that, the Prophet, he was, he enjoined with a lot of emphasis. And the reason is, we'll go into, in a lot more detail, but it just solves a lot of issues that would otherwise, arise. And then the second key reason for a Muslim living in the West, in the UK, is that if you die without a will, then your estate, your money, your finances, your children, and what happens with them, everything will be determined according to English and Welsh law and not Islamic law. So what that means is that you will, the first time that you appear in front of the Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're questioned, if you don't have a will sorted, you are turning up, and the very last act that you did is one that is, going against the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's not a good position to be in. And, your will and your inheritance would be distributed according to a law other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's, which is obviously problematic, and it can cause disputes and what have you as well. From a practical perspective, the single most important thing, and I think you, Brother Tawfiq, you emphasized this at the start, is it avoids so many disputes. That, if there's one thing you take away from this entire presentation, it is you want to avoid disputes. Get this sorted now. I can give you an example from my own family where there was one of our ancestors. He from one of the sides of the family, he was very well to do. He created a few factories, and unfortunately, when he passed away, there wasn't an Islamic distribution that happened, and the brothers, they took charge of these factories. And then what happened was, again, there was no Islamic distribution that happened. And so when the next generation passed away, it caused even more problems, because now you've got, instead of dealing with 2 or 3 people, you're now dealing with dozens of people. And these are, multi-million-pound factories. So it's material amounts of money, and they're now going through a court process, and, it's going to cost them a lot of money. And who knows, what is ultimately going to be decided. All of that could have been avoided and nipped in the bud if there was an Islamic will written that was legally binding, and that was what the assets were distributed according to right at the start. And many people in this audience will have situations where, if you think through your assets, you might think, oh yeah, there is that. I think that I was contributing into buying this house, and so in my head, I think I own 50% of that house, but I don't know if my dad thinks that. He's living in the house. I don't know what there are many kind of ambiguous situations that all of us have in our lives. For example, someone gifted someone gold, or some mother or grandmother said that this is some gold that I'm leaving aside for X person. What is the legal status of that? All of those kind of things. And there are, every one of us will have certain situations like that. So we want to make sure that we try and use this Islamic will as a great, moment to have that frank conversation with our grandmothers, with our mothers, with our wives, with our children, to sort all of that out. And I'm sure it's not an easy conversation to have at the best of times, but believe you me, it's better to have that conversation whilst you're alive, as opposed to having, leaving that conversation for people who don't know anything about, the intricacies, to have that conversation after you pass away. And then, from a commercial perspective, having an Islamic will makes a lot of sense as well. So on average, you're going to lose around £9,700, £10,000 worth of assets if you don't have an Islamic will. So all of us, my dad has investments in Pakistan. I think he has something in Bahrain as well. And I don't frankly, I don't know all of what's going on. And I'm sure in your communities it's the same, right? You have assets all over the world, and you're not exactly sure what's going on. And what happens on average is that about £10,000 worth of assets are lost if you don't have an Islamic will. So it's really critical to make sure that you have it. And if you have an estate above £325,000, then in the UK, you'll be charged inheritance tax of 40%. So what that means is that if you have an estate of, let's say, £1 million, then, if you don't have a will, if you don't plan it out properly, then you will actually end up paying 40% tax on around £675,000, which is a lot of money. I think it's from a really quick calculation, around £270,000. So that is a huge amount of money that you would be handing over. But if you have a tax efficient will, then actually you can negate nearly all of that, or all of that inheritance tax. So that's another really important reason, especially for those who have larger estates, to make sure that you are thinking about that. And then really the final two things are that, when you do an Islamic will, it gives an opportunity for someone, who is knowledgeable about Islamic wills, bequest, inheritance, legal affairs, someone like Isma'il and, the team, then they will actually be able to flag important things to you. For example, are you legally married or not, or is it just a nikah? Because if that's the case, then you should get legally married, because otherwise, you won't necessarily have the inheritance tax planning tools that you would otherwise have if you were legally married. So getting legally married is... There are things like that we can flag to you at the right time. And then finally, it allows you to leave requests around guardianship for your children, and make sure, especially if you have non-Muslims in your family, that you're not cremated and things like that. But I feel like I'm probably now heading into the territory that Isma'il will want to cover. So I'll hand over to you, Isma'il.
Jazakallah khair. You really set things up perfectly. But moving on to some jargon busting. So really, Ibrahim has outlined why we would want a will in place and some of the benefits of it. But for many people, just the idea of putting a will in place is often quite daunting, because you come across a lot of legal jargon that you've never had to encounter before, never had to look up. And so I'm going to run through some of the jargon and just demystify it. And that way, inshallah, in which direction you go in getting your will put into place, you'll have a lot more confidence. So the first thing is, what is a will? So a will is a legal document that's recording your wishes for after you pass away. So that can outline your burial wishes, as Ibrahim mentioned. Who's going to be looking after your children if you have any below the age of 18 and there isn't a parent still surviving, and even who's going to deal with the wrapping up of your estate and the transfer of your assets. So these are really important things, and you want the right people who are capable to be handling them. And so after that, who's a testator? So a testator is you, myself, anyone who creates a will. So the testator of a will is the person creating a will, or who's put a will into place. And people that are putting their will into place need to think about an issue of capacity. Do you have capacity to make a will? So there are certain people that won't have capacity to make a legal will. And why is that? It may be that they're below the age of 18, so they don't have legal capacity, or they're not of sound mind and memory. And so we need to make sure that there is clarity with regard to you having legal capacity and putting a will into place. Because if there isn't, then additional safeguards should be put into place just to make sure that the will hold up and it is legally binding. So we've mentioned estate a few times. Now, your estate is all of your assets, be they your cash that's lying around, your furniture, your car, properties, whatever it is, it's all of your assets subtracted by your debts. And that is what forms your estate. So that's what you're going to want to think about with regard to inheritance tax liability, and also with regard to what's going to be passed on. So the people that are going to manage your estate and pass it, make sure that it's passed on correctly, are your executors. So executor is the term for the people that are appointed to distribute your estate and wrap it all up, because it's not just about passing on your assets, it's making sure that your bank accounts are closed so that no fraud is done through the accounts, or the council is aware of the fact that you're no longer living at your address. So there's a lot more to what they do than just passing on your assets. But because there's such a responsibility there, really what you want to be thinking about is, who can I determine who's close to me or who's trustworthy, organized and competent, because they're going to have to keep records of what they work through. And especially if there's a complicated estate, so if your estate value is quite high, or if your assets are quite diverse, they may also need to take professional advice. And so you do want someone that's quite competent in place, rather than someone that you just feel quite emotionally attached to. Because it may be that some people think, well, my spouse can be my executor, and that's nice and simple. But actually, is your spouse the right person to have to deal with wrapping up your estate when they're going to be in a circumstance where they've just been deprived of your presence, you've just passed on? So that's something that needs to be given serious consideration, as well as who you'd appoint as a legal guardian. So most importantly, your legal guardian who will look after and raise your children who are under the age of 18 cannot be your spouse, because the only time when a legal guardian is going to be appointed is if there is no parent left to look after your kids. And so, as you can imagine, this is something that a lot of people would be concerned about, and they may even not have given much thought to. So this is a particularly important thought and discussion to have with one's family, because then you start realizing, wow, I actually don't have many people that I would be comfortable raising my child. And you realize the importance of family ties. You know, Islam emphasizes our family ties, but when you realize that with the most important thing, raising your children, suddenly it's important. You know, it's important to recognize the value of, say, our siblings, our parents, those that deep down we have a lot of trust for, but sometimes we may take for granted. And then another really important piece of jargon is bequest. So Ibrahim mentioned it, and it's a key part of a will, because the way that an Islamic will works is that 2/3 or more of your estate must be distributed along Islamic inheritance allocations. So Islamic inheritance allocations are taken from the laws that are set out in the Quran, the distributions, and so that will cover your nearest and dearest. And so, like I said previously, it takes the personal out. Your mother has a certain share, your children have a certain share. You haven't made any decision as to someone getting more, someone getting less. It's what Allah's determined, and we should all make peace with that. But you do have up to 1/3 of the value of your estate that you can bequeath to either friends, charity, whatever you want. So you have some discretion over where things can go. It may be a best friend that's helped you through hard times. It may be that you wish for certain assets to go to certain people. And most importantly, when it comes to bequests, it gives the opportunity for sadaqah jariyah, because we know that there are very few things that will benefit us after we pass away. And one of those things is giving towards certain causes that will continue to provide benefit after we pass. And so a key part of a Muslim's will would be leaving something behind to continue to leave a positive legacy. And just an insider's tip, since you've got Ibrahim and I on, there may be discounts on the Islamic wills we provide through certain charity partners. And we can't give you specific names, but if you were to support a charity, it may be worth looking into either if they provide it or if they're going to plan to provide it, and they can reach out to us, because there may be charity campaigns at the moment that will provide access to an IFG Islamic will at discounted rate. But that's between you and us, an insider tip. So yeah, with bequests, really the requirement is there needs to be 3 certainties. The certainty that you intend to make a gift, and drafting it appropriately in the will make sure that that's covered. The certainty of what you wish to leave behind. So you can't just say, I wish to leave some money to my best friend's son, because when your will is being read for approval, the question is, how much money did you intend? How much is going to be taken out of what would otherwise have been left for your Islamic inheritors? And so we need certainty of objects, what's being left behind. And finally, certainty of who it's going to. So you can't say, I leave it behind to my nephew, because if you have more than one nephew, which one did you mean? So that's bequests. And it's also quite useful for making sure that certain sentimental possessions go to the person you want it to. And in order to put a legal will in place, you need to have witnesses. Who can be a witness? Now, a witness can be anyone who is reliable, who isn't blind, who isn't someone who's going to benefit from the will, or the spouse of someone who's not going to benefit, who's going to benefit from the will. And so long as there isn't a conflict of interest, there's someone reliable and preferably above the age of 18, they can act as a witness. So long as you have 2 legal witnesses, 2 eligible witnesses who can watch you signing and can vouch for the fact that you signing is to indicate your intent to put everything in the document into place and give it legal effect, then you can put your will into place legally. And then there's the term probate. Probate is the process of distributing and winding up your estate after you've passed. So it's everything that happens after the passing away of someone that has a will. And then finally, Ibrahim mentioned inheritance tax. So an inheritance tax is a tax of 40% often on assets, and it starts at 325,000. Now there are various different scenarios where there are different allowances available. There are different scenarios where one's estate can be organized in certain ways to mitigate and reduce liability. So it's important to also think about putting your will in place, because you may be able to organize or distribute your assets in such a way as to limit your liability, or put yourself and your family, those who are going to receive your estate, in a tax efficient or tax advantageous way. Now, with that all being said, please do drop questions in the chat area if you have any questions with regard to any other terms. But those were all the jargon terms that I wanted to cover. And now I want to give you an insight into the platform that Ibrahim mentioned has just launched today. Alhamdulillah. It's really exciting for me to be able to share it with you.
Awesome.
So let's see.
So as you transition to that, I'll read off some of the questions that have come
Sure.
on the chat. So one of the questions is around, does your will product have the capacity to take into account person-to-person lending? So for instance, if you have a debt that you are owed by a person, or if you have a debt that you owe an individual, does your product, or is it capable of taking that into account?
Yes, so we do ask about loans and debts. So I would encourage people to make a note of that in their will, because as Ibrahim mentioned, there are certain things that will only be known by you during your lifetime. And so it's important to note it in your will. And another important thing for people to note is that where certain loans are significant, they're not, petty change between us. It may even be important to encourage a person to have some sort of legal document put in place to make sure that that loan is enforceable, if one feels like it's appropriate. Because very often we have verbal agreements between each other, but actually our loans and what we expect is owed to us aren't legally enforceable. So yeah, you can include notes of any loans or debts in your will.
Awesome. Yeah, that's particularly important because we know that we need to settle our debts before we're buried. If not, we'll be suspended. So yeah, we don't want to be in that situation. So barakallahu feek. Another question we have here. Let's see. How can we find out more details about your company? I guess you're going to go through a demo of your product now, so you might plug the website in a second. I'll let you do that, but let me see one more question. So kind of Muslim products.
So just to pick up on that, I suggest that if you have, so firstly, our website is islamicfinanceguru.com. So feel free to check it out. But also, you have one of the co-founders of the company on this call. Alhamdulillah, it's quite a good opportunity. So if you have any specific questions that you wish to ask, or things that you want to know, now's the time to leave those questions in the chat space, and he'll be able to answer them.
Perfect. Barakallahu feek. And last one, somebody asked, do you need a lawyer to make a will legal and valid, I guess, in the UK?
So to make a legal will, actually all you need is those two eligible witnesses to witness your will. And then you need to cover the key information that I worked through mentioning the jargon. So executors, guardian, if you wish to leave behind any messages or instructions, that's what a will should cover. But in actual fact, we have a guide online on our will space that outlines other options and other ways of putting wills into place besides our product, because it's actually quite important that Muslims put wills into place, whether it be through us or otherwise. So really, so long as you've got two people to witness your will, and they've seen you sign the document, and they then sign to vouch for the fact that they've witnessed you sign the document, that's a legally valid will.
Awesome. And that should have covered the next question, which says, is there a simple way of writing an Islamic will for someone that doesn't have much property or money?
So one thing that may be a bit of a misconception is that because we don't have many assets now, it's not worth putting a will into place. There may be things that are important to us, either in terms of specific assets being passed on, specific assets being noted, or guardianship of children in particular, that you may wish to have a professional will drafted in order to cover. Now, the other area of some degree of complexity is just making sure that your will is Islamically compliant, because people are asking about it being compliant with the law of the land, which is absolutely important because that's what will make your will enforceable. However, there are also ways that the will has to be structured in order to make sure that the parameters that Islam and inheritance Islamically set out are observed.
Understood. Barakallahu feek. A couple more, then we'll switch on to the presentation, and then we'll come back to the Q&A in the end. So, question around, if you have assets, both you live in the UK, you have assets in the UK and abroad, and you combine that information in one will, more specifically one of your products.
This is a common question. It's a good one. So Jazakallah khair for raising that one. So where you have assets abroad, you can note them in your will, because your will covers the whole of your estate. However, if it's not, say, bank accounts, and it's something fixed in a foreign country, say property, as you, Tawfiq, alluded to, there are certain things that cause disputes typically, so say property. And given that that's the case, we encourage people to make a will in the jurisdiction where they hold property or valuable assets overseas under that jurisdiction, just so that the executors have the full force of domestic law to support their executors in handling those specific assets.
Barakallahu feek. And we'll take one more now. Is there a minimum age one needs to be to have a will, or does a child count if you class the assets as theirs?
18.
18. Okay, great, awesome. Barakallahu feek.
Absolute pleasure. So shall we get into the platform?
Yes, please.
The big revelation, Bismillah. So this is the wills.Islamic Finance Guru webpage. I'll quickly run you through just to give you a lay of the land. So there's a bit there about what distinguishes us. Alhamdulillah, we're quite fast, and we do make sure that there's expert involvement to
Sorry,
make the will.
I'm not sure we can see the page.
Can you know? Okay. So it says that I'm sharing.
We could see your own video.
Can you see it now? I've removed, so there was a spotlight on myself.
Yeah, no, we can't see anything at the moment. Maybe if you reshare again.
Okay, let's do that.
It wouldn't be a Zoom call without some technical glitch, would it?
Indeed.
How's that? Is that coming through?
I can see myself now, and it's a fantastic site, but
excellent. How's that?
You probably need to drag the screen over to where the Zoom.
Let's actually, what I may be doing is sharing the wrong window.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We can see.
There we are. We're in business. Alhamdulillah. So here is wills.islamicfinanceguru.com. So this is what you'll encounter if you were to come to our website. As I said, there are certain things that we pride ourselves on and we hold ourselves to. And alhamdulillah, people are quite satisfied with our service. You'll find that we have FAQs at the bottom, and also we have further guidance provided in our FAQ articles that people can check out. And then there's some further articles linked here. Now back to the big reveal. We have our platform that can be accessed. You're clicking here. Bismillah. And really there are two questions: assets in England and Wales, and then we're in. Now I've already signed up to the platform, so I'll sign in and give you a peek at what it looks like from the inside. Bismillah. So here we are. Here's the platform. It's secure. And the key thing about this platform and the opportunity that it affords people is that working through the old system that we had meant that once you submit the form, you can't go back and change the answers. Of course, you can always email us to change or update or query things that you're not sure about or you've submitted to us. But in this platform, you'll be able to revisit it on your side and review what you've said. So just working through some of it, your name, your gender, your date of birth, all important information. We mentioned family. So this is going to help us to work out your Islamic inheritance shares. And Ibrahim mentioned about the importance of being legally married. And then we flick through. Gifts and bequests. So now you can either leave it to someone or even, and this is an important one, we can leave bequests to Islamic inheritors so long as we're leaving it as part of their inheritance share. Ibrahim, do you have any suggestions about certain areas of the platform that I should run through? Or?
Yeah, I mean, if you click into the asset section,
yes.
What's really interesting about this asset section is that we go into it in a lot of detail, so you can specify all of the different assets that you have, and let's say you go into bank accounts or share funds and crypto, maybe Isma'il, like just select some of them. And what is going on here, what we're building actually in the back end, is that you will actually be able to track your net worth once you populate this entire calculation. Not only will it be stored within your will, but also you'll be able to track your net worth on an ongoing basis. Now that bit of the product isn't built yet, but it will be in the next few months, inshallah. And the vision here is that you will then be able to, every year, you will then be able to essentially print out a copy of your net worth as of the date of that printout, and you will then just be able to attach it to your will, so that your will is actually kept up to date in a lot of detail, much more so than would otherwise be possible. And then the other benefit that you will get from taking this approach is that come Ramadan, these are exactly all of the kind of questions that you need to do in order to fill out your zakat every Ramadan or whenever you fill it out. And so in our zakat calculator, zakat.islamicfinanceguru.com, again, by Ramadan, this will be in place. You will actually have it all pre-populated. So you save yourself, the 20 minutes or half an hour of calculation that you would otherwise have to do. You would already have that all done, and you just need to maybe tweak a few different things, and then your zakat would be calculated as well. So there's a lot more interesting, useful stuff that is going on, in the background here. And of course, you get your Islamic will, that's drafted for you as well.
So that's the platform. Ibrahim, shall I hand back to you?
Yeah, sure. In a nutshell, that's the IFG wills offering, and why you should go for an Islamic will. You can, and by the way, for us, the key thing from a mission perspective is that you get an Islamic will sorted. And so, on our website, we've got an Islamic wills guide, which actually refers you to other people that do Islamic wills as well. And so we're not particularly precious about you necessarily using us. Just make sure you get it sorted somewhere or another. There are for people without many assets, then going for a free will, like for example a student going for a free will just online. We actually have a page on our website that links out all of the different free wills that are available. You can just download that, print it off, and use that. That's perfectly fine. For someone who's a bit more, perhaps they're married now, they've got a job, I think it's important to get a paid will, because you'll just get a better quality will. And then for someone who has a lot of money or is towards the end of their life, they definitely should have a will, and they'll probably need a trust-based will, which is something that becomes tax efficient. And if you need that, then we will flag that to you as part of the wills process. So yeah, that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour through everything to do with wasiyah. I'd love to hear your questions, and more than happy to try and help in any way we can.
Awesome. Barakallahu feek to both our brothers, Ibrahim and Isma'il, for this, what has been a very revealing session. Alhamdulillah, demystified a lot of things that people and terms and terminology that relates to one's will. So barakallahu feek, we're very grateful for the time that you spent with us. I've got two more questions on here. One was around who can be an executor. It was mentioned in passing that it can't be somebody who might benefit from the will. So in which case, if you don't have anyone apart from people who will under the Islamic kind of division benefit from the will, who else might qualify to be an executor of one's will?
So I can answer that. Actually, this is where I should have been clearer. There's a difference between the witnesses and the executors. And so witnesses, they can't have that conflict of interest where they may be benefiting under the will and also vouching for its validity for obvious reasons. But executors can be your nearest and dearest. So it may be that actually you do appoint your brother, or that's not uncommon, or your father as an executor. So there's no restriction with regard to in appointing executors, so long as they're competent people. And also there is the option of appointing professional executors, but that comes with a cost. Whereas with personal executors, they will be able to reclaim their expenses, say for example any funeral expenses that they pay from the estate. But professional executors may take, for example, 1 or 2% of the estate's value. So where you can get away with appointing someone competent in your own social circle, you may as well do so, because then those people, where necessary, can reach out to professionals for further guidance without you having to instruct them to take care of the whole probate process. So it can be your nearest and dearest and your inheritors who act as executors. Awesome.
Barakallahu feek. And last one was around, with your product, if the will is online, how do witnesses sign for it?
So the will is indeed online. Your submission is online, so your instruction to us is online, and the platform is online. However, we will email to you your will, password protected, and it needs to be printed. A will at the moment does have to be a physical document. The courts are very cautious against fraud for obvious reasons. And so due to COVID, there were measures in place for witnessing over online technology, but it's so complicated and the bar is so high that most professionals actually, a survey was done recently, they aren't actually using that option. The simplest and the best way is the will is printed out, it has to be, and then you gather two witnesses in the same room as you, who then in one go sign the will after you've signed it.
Awesome. One thing, a question on the cost of your standardized will product online, just so that people have an idea, ballpark, what would that be looking like? And if one needs to make updates to the will, is it still just the one price that you paid up front? How does it work?
Excellent question. So a standard will is £98, a standard Islamic will. And after that, we have two options for keeping it up to date. Some opt for £30 for a one-off update. Others opt for the unlimited amendment subscription that we offer, where for £10 a year, you get in touch with us as and when you have updates that need to be made to your will, and we'll just issue you with an amended will based on what's changed. So the basic cost is £10 a year for most people.
And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people at the end of this call who would like to jump on the board, or jump on board and sign up via your platform. Any chance, and I have to ask the question, any chance we can get one of these promotional codes that you made mention of in order to really kind of, limited time to push everyone over the edge?
You know what? That's it would have been I would be keen to do that, and we probably will do that, but because the platform is literally just launched today, I'm not sure we actually have the capability of getting the coupons through it yet. But inshallah, once we do, then we'll hook you up.
Awesome. Barakallah.
But you should crack on regardless.
Agreed. All right, then. We don't have any additional question. Do I have to register my nikah to make it? Okay. There's a question here about nikahs and whether you have to register it to make it legal in the UK. I don't know if you're qualified to answer that question. When you made the comment that make sure your marriage is legally kind of recognized, what does that entail? If you have the knowledge.
Yeah, it ultimately depends on if your marriage is accepted by the UK court, and the fail-safe approach is, I'm married in the UK, I've got an marriage that is registered with the registry office. But if you are married in Nigeria, India, Pakistan, wherever, and you have a marriage certificate, then it's pretty standard that they will accept that as proof that you're married as well.
Awesome. Barakallahu feek. All right, I know Maghrib is upon us. So once again, I want to say a massive thank you to both Brother Ibrahim and Isma'il. Barakallahu feek for your time. May Allah accept this from you as an act of worship and make it heavy on your skills. And definitely for Brother Ibrahim and your co-founders, may Allah put barakah in all of the products you're reeling out for our community. We really need it. We do need to level up. There's no reason we should lag behind. Obviously, we want our list to be halal as well. So the fact that you're trying to bring ease and kind of keep us up to date with the latest, may Allah put ease and barakah in your efforts. It's definitely very laudable. Barakallahu feek, and thank you once again for taking up time on your Saturday to be with us. Inshallah, I will be chasing you up for that discount code once you have some time for you to make the changes on your platform. But in the meantime, I would say to everyone, don't let that be the thing that delays you from taking heed of the message and actually sorting out your Islamic will. And inshallah, we'll be back again next week with our regular sessions and teachings. Barakallahu feek to everyone who joined us today. Once again, thank you to Brother Ibrahim and Isma'il from the Muslim platform. Take care, have a wonderful day. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Take care.